So back at the beginning of June, I was out in Montana working on a house, and I needed some other just laborers. They didn't have to have their they didn't have to be wrapped too tight. They didn't have to be skilled workers as far as that needed to be. I just needed an extra hand with some things. Someone to be able to work alongside and be sometimes, hey, you hold this board, or I'm down the crawl space, I'm going to hand you junk, and you take it up through the hole and out into the big dumpster, that kind of stuff. And so I went into the middle of town there, and I found what's called a temp service. And many big cities will have a temp service. It's almost like day laborers. Okay, somebody else, an organization takes care of all the taxes and so forth, and I can call them up one day, the day I need them, or a day ahead of time, say, hey, I need 2 workers, and they say, we'll have you 2 guys. And I don't know who I'm getting until I show up to pick them up, okay, or else till they drive out. And then I pay the temp service, $25 an hour or whatever it is, and then they deal with all the tax work and the paperwork and all of that employee and human resources stuff that the government cares about. And so every once in a while, I'll hire on somebody like that and never know who I'm getting. Well, beginning of June, I said I needed some guys, and along comes Stan and Austin. Stan and Austin come out to work with me, and they're cousins. And they had been, we might say they had been a little bit down on their luck, but Austin really worked hard, and he wanted to get a job, and they were going to work for me for 2 days in a row. But then we filled the dumpster too full until they had to get it off. There was going to be a day gap in between. And so Stan and Austin come down, and they're helping me a little bit. And they would need to stop for their smoke break every so often, and okay, whatever. And so we went for lunch, and I asked them, where would you like to go for lunch? I'll buy you lunch. And so we went out to McDonald's, grabbed them 2 triple cheeseburgers. That's what they wanted. I guess they needed some meat. They hadn't had much to eat from beforehand. 2 triple cheeseburgers and a large drink, and that's what they got. So I started to ask them a little bit about your life. Hey, if you care to, tell me a little bit about yourself. You married? No. Any children? No. And then Stan goes, well, yeah, actually, I have a son. I think he's going to turn 14, maybe 13. I haven't seen him since he was born. We had to adopt him out. I'm not sure where he's at. Okay. As I spoke with them a little bit, I found out that in their life, in living in the joy of the moment, in enjoying the moment, your decisions, if it's not based within the principles that God intends for us to base in, it has long-reaching consequences. It's not that he didn't care about his son anymore, but that son was conceived out of wedlock, obviously, whenever he was a teenager. And he was living in the fun in the moment and had to be adopted away. They had been in and out of drug rehab, had themselves cleaned up pretty good, trying to make a go of it. Okay? Well, 2 days later, whenever I went to pick him up again, it had been raining, and Austin called me and said, I can't come. I got a job. I got a full-time job at Albertsons. Albertsons is a little grocery store chain out there in the West, kind of like your Weiss Market that you might have, around this way. I got a job working for them. I'm like, well, great. Congratulations. Way to go. But Stan's coming. He'll be there. Well, he wasn't coming. And one of the things you have to understand is if the weather's bad, they may or may not show up. Okay? That's just the way it is. How can we help someone like that? How can we help them after the fact whenever they had made many decisions that maybe they was partially forced into, maybe through peer pressure, hey, try this smoke, try this drink, try this drugs a little bit, they hadn't been raised in a society that you and I did. And as I was playing the gospel music there, along the line, the one guy said, my mother would like your music because she's a Christian, and I'm a Christian too. I'm like, well, that's great. I find it inspiring. I find it something that gives me hope and joy, that I can have this running through my mind and I can think about and the things of God and the things of Christ. So what do you do with that? Are they a Christian? Are they not a Christian? Are they a follower of Christ? Are they not a follower of Christ? See, these two young fellows, if they could turn the clock back and make some other decisions, they would. But they can't. Because life is gone. The fun of the one-night stand, whether it's a high school sweetheart or whatever that it is that you found up at a bar that some of the movies and country songs think is something grand and glorious, that joy and pleasure is just, and it's all gone. But the principles of Christ and that God has given to us says that type of intimacy lives on and on and on and on whenever it's founded within the laws of marriage, like He had intended. Okay? Some of you have already made that step. Some of you have already checked the box yes or no, or yes, does she love me or does she not? Check yes or no. Some of you, it appears anyway, have checked yes to that box. That's okay. Live within those boundaries. Live within the boundaries that God has given. And yes, as I look at my sweetheart and say 29 years, where did time go? Gone. It goes by quickly. It really, really does. And if I were to ask Philip and Anna and Grover and Joe and them and about their marriages and how long, who have been married longer than I have, my guess is they would say something similar anyway, right? And so life goes by quickly. And we have to live in the reality of the moment. And sometimes it's easy for us to get so encumbered in our mind with worry and anxiety about what happened yesterday and how am I going to deal with it today and what in the world am I going to do with it tomorrow, that we don't get the moment to stop and worship whenever we see the sunrise or when we experience the liquid sunshine like we just had here a couple hours ago. All right, most of us don't like to stand out in the rain because our feathers haven't been preened well enough to run it off of us, and we don't normally like to get that wet, at least not in these clothes anyway. Maybe if we're water skiing, it'd be a little different story, but enjoy the moment for the moment. And some people will get so hung up with worry and stress about them that Solomon talks about here in Ecclesiastes, that they miss the joy of the moment. Oh, we've got to sit through class for an hour and a half. It's only an hour and a half. Be thankful it's not 2 hours. I mean, come on, this too shall pass.
Enjoy the moment.
So we wrestle between some of the words of Solomon from the Epicurean area, and that says you can't have any fun. Fun and joy is bad, and all there is about life is having fun and joy. Okay, somewhere we've got to live within the tension of the two. Does that make sense? Okay, and we've got to figure that out. And I believe that when we looked at the conclusion of the whole matter, we started at the end yesterday. We'll look at it some more on Friday. Conclusion of the whole matter is fear God and keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of man. All that's required of you is to fear God and do what He says. That's it. Life is not that complicated. Fear God and keep His commandments. And keep His commandments and fear the Lord, whether it's issues about your marriage, about your business, about your employment that you have, about the car that you have to drive or want to drive, about about life in general and enjoy life in the moment because it's all gone. We're going to start with chapter 3, and as we read through this first section where there's a whole bunch of times, I want your help, okay? Most of these verses are listed with times that are contrasts. And we're going to break them apart. In many of the verses, there's two different contrasts within the same verse. I want you to read through this popcorn style, just spit it off, but I want you to read only one contrast, okay? So like somebody will say, there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, and then that's all you'll read. And then there's another one that says something about time to live and a time to die, and that's all you'll read. Does that make sense? Just do the little contrast from that moment, and that's all. And so in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, it begins, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter that is under the sun," every purpose that is there. Let's go and read verses 2 through 8, and they'll be, go. Now, as we read through this, thank you for that help. As we read through this, most of it has the derogatory part of it first, and the good stuff last. Most of the time it's that way. At least it's what we feel. But it starts out by saying what? It starts off saying a time to be born and a time to die. How many of you look at birth as being something, whatever? See, that one's kind of backwards. Or do we think of life and death backwards? Do we have to rethink our idea of life and death? So we have this idea of a new little one coming along, and it's so many months until this child is born. And then we get to hold it and gush all over about whose nose it has and everything else, and how cute it is. And newborn babies, they're not that cute. I mean, there's something cute about new life, but wait till you're in the delivery room sometime, okay? It's not that pretty. But by the way, neither is it in the coffin either. They have more makeup than Mary Kay and Avon put together on him, and someone says he looks good. No, he doesn't. It looks dead. It looks terrible. I've told my family I'm going to have this. We have some good technology that's available now. I'm going to have some kind of voice recognition device in my coffin with a Bluetooth speaker that whenever somebody comes through and says he looks good, it will be in my voice. No, I don't. I look dead. Because it doesn't look. I'm not saying I look good now, okay? And I haven't used very much Avon and Mary Kay, all right? Just for whatever purposes, I just simply haven't gone quite that sophisticated, I guess. I don't know. And I don't care that you do or don't, but he looks good. No, he does not. Death doesn't look very good either. But there's a time for life, and now we call it birthday. I called my cousin today and said, "Happy birthday, cuz. How you doing?" Okay? And he's 53 years old. He says, "I'm doing pretty good." He says, "But my wife's dad is not. He fell the other day." He lives in Ohio. He fell the other day. And he's been battling some type of a blood disease. I don't even know what the name is anymore. And they put him on oxygen right away, and they can't hardly keep the oxygen reading through his finger sensors anymore. It's not going to be long. Hospice has said it's just not much yet. Well, sometimes it's easier for us to tell the time of birth than it is the time of death. But either way, there's a time to be born, there's a time to die. And they're polar opposites. I still think a birth is better than a death, personally, okay? I really do. But for those of us who are believers, it's just a sleep for us. Remember what Jesus said about Lazarus? He's just sleeping. I'm going to go wake him up. Now, I don't want to get into all of the grave sleep type of theory, okay? But it's just a temporary sleep for us, and we're going to rise again as believers, aren't we? So we sorrow, but not like those that have no hope. A time to plant, a time to pluck up what was planted. We don't do too much plucking up unless you're picking your onions or red beets along the line, but we do plant. As I was reading through this and I was thinking of some of this birth and death and whatever else that was going on, a friend of mine called me, and this guy is, well, I don't know if he uses Avon and Mary Kay, but he actually might. And he's one of them that, I mean, this guy could grow one hero of a unibrow, okay? But he's determined that he's got to pluck it because it's embarrassing to him. And I was like, hey, there it is. Mr. I won't say his name. The Bible says that you can pluck your brows if you want to. So, you know, ladies, I don't want to get this into a tension between you and your mom and dad about whether you pluck your eyebrows or not, but here's your piece. Ecclesiastes says that I can. There's a time to it. I guess I would ask the question, when did you plant it? So maybe it doesn't quite fit. But there's a time for all these things, a time to kill and a time to heal, break down, build up. You know, this house that needs so much work, I had to break it down to the studs and to the rafters and to the floor joists. And now it's time to build it back. And what's going to be built back is going to be so much better than what had been. And most likely, because of the age of it, it will be better than what it ever was even in the beginning, because we have some of the better building materials that we have now. Time to weep, laugh, mourn versus dance. Cast away stones, gather stones together. How many of you guys like picking rocks? Yeah, did Dad use this on you? All right, boys, it's time to go out there and start picking rocks. Well, I don't see it too much in here in the East, but one of the things that I see in the West once in a while that I think is absolutely genius, they'll take some chicken wire or chain link wire and wrap it in a circle and just dump all the rocks in there. And that's the kingpin for their fences because it ain't moving. It's not going anywhere. They strip their fence off that. Did it? You guys do that in Franklin County? You seen that? Well, there you go. There's an idea for Dad now. Instead of having a big old rock pile, make something useful out of it. But when would you throw the stones out? Time to gather stones, time to throw them out. Hopefully not at each other. But we gather and we put them together. We build fences. We build rock walls. Up in Maine and in the New England states, you'll find old rock walls, and some of those things are 200 plus years old. And they've got great big old oak trees growing out of the middle of them. They gathered all those rocks together so they could plow it with their oxen and with their mules, and they gathered them over on the side, and they planted some rock walls together. A time to seek and a time to lose. Well, how many of you like to lose something? Okay, except weight or hair. But no, a time to look for something, a time to lose something. A time to keep and time to throw away. Spring cleaning. Hey, you know what? Time to get this attic cleaned out, or basement, or storage shed. We haven't used it in the last 5 years. We're probably not going to use it in the next 5. Time to cast away something that I've been keeping. A time to tear and a time to sow. I like that one more than my wife does. I came back last week with a great big old rip in my jeans, and they were at a place where it's not very convenient to have a rip at. And I was like, I'm not sure, honey, if you can fix these things or not. So I rip it and she mends it. I'm not sure she's too proud of me of this verse either whenever I bring it to him. Just keeping the word. I'm just living up to the Bible. I'm not sure she's too impressed with it, but whether she sews it and mends it or whether she says, yeah, the fabric is rotten enough on those denims, it's time to just toss them and start over again. That'll be up to her to decide on that. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. That one comes in convenient as a teacher in school. What do you think of all these times? Why times? Why are they listed in this manner? See, life isn't all a dance. There's a time to dance, there's a time to mourn. Life isn't always happy. Life isn't always fun and games. We also have to work. And we looked at that, the toil of labor. So depending on the job, depending on the career that you have, you work 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, maybe more, maybe less. Maybe you're on a shift rotation if you're in service work, of servicing agricultural parts or electrical stuff, or within the medical field, and you're on a shift rotation. There's a time for you to work big shifts, and then oh, by the way, you have 5 days vacation this year, and that's all. So it's time to work, time to have vacation, because life is real. We live within the reality of life. It's not just all a dance. It's not just all fun and games. And so when it comes to the fun part of life, have fun. When it comes to enjoyment, hey, we're going to get together and have volleyball. Do you want to come over? We're going to get together and have a campfire at our place. Bring some stuff along. We got all the stuff for s'mores. You guys bring the rest of the chips and drink or whatever you want to in your lawn chairs. And we're just, great, go ahead and do it. But that doesn't work out quite so well at 1 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, does it? Because what are you doing at 1 o'clock Tuesday afternoon? You're working, right? So there's a time to work and there's a time to have a campfire. One of the slogans that my dad had on the farm was, boys, get the work done first and then you can go play. Then you can go fishing. And of course, there were times we had youth camp out. Hey, you guys go ahead, I'll take over. And he would let us off for those type of things. There's a time for everything, even some of the inconveniences about life, even some of the things that we might not like. Which leads us into the next section of verses 9 through 15. Someone read verses 9 through 15. In the midst of all of these times, there's a God-appointed time. So in all of these times, and in our work and vacation, in our joy, in our sorrow, in our birth and our death, in all that we take part in, there's a God moment. There's the finger of God that's working in your life and in mine. And in that chapter 12, when we come to the conclusion, whenever we recognize that, or whenever we know it, or whenever we live with that reality in mind, there's a God moment for me to be here. There's a God moment for me to be in Montana fixing the house with having Stan and Austin helping me out just for a little bit. Okay? There's God moments for whatever that you have. God has ordained, God has put it around that you be at a certain place at a certain time. And sometimes we don't understand the why. It's okay. I have come to the conclusion, I didn't always have this conclusion, okay? But I have come to the conclusion that I don't need to understand the why. Just live in that reality. There's things that have happened in my life, and I'm sure that in yours also, that you could have never planned that. You don't even know why you were there at that place for that time. It seemed to be 100% coincidence. And so there's a God moment in all of it, and this idea that I can live in joy. And yesterday, whenever I asked, what is your ideal salary that you think you would have, or your ideal occupation, your ideal career? Okay? Would it be different for you or for me if we were born into the family of Elon Musk? Well, yeah, number one, we'd have to share a dad with how many other different siblings that have how many other mothers or mistresses. And you might say, oh, I'd like to have some of Elon Musk's money. Would you really want to be one of his children? Dad's never around. He has an incredibly warped view of marriage. Okay? I don't think any of us would want to sign up for that. When we were in Maine, one of the people that I had to build a shed for that came with a must have broke it. Anyhow, they came to buy a shed from us. I was talking to a nanny and the nanny's mother. These two ladies were mother and daughter, and they were nannies for a very popular movie actor. If I would say his name, you would recognize him. Many of them think he's one of the greatest action figures that are around. And I, was asking them how some of their life is. Oh, they can't cope. I'm like, what? No, we're hired to take care of his children for a reason. They might have all of the money that he ever wants to have, and he might be able to have his second and third house. But if we're not there, his children would never be taken care of. Because he might be able to perform on stage, in the actor's room, whatever. He might be able to perform there. But he has no idea how to be a dad. And I was like, I'll take the dad that I have. Even though I didn't always agree with my dad. And sometimes, well, to be honest with you, I didn't always like him. That's on me, not on him. Okay? And so if we were to choose, see, none of us chose our last name. That was given to us. Okay? We didn't choose our place of birth. I don't have any better standing on this earth out of my choice than Austin and Stan. Okay? They didn't choose that either. The millions of possibilities that it was whenever I was conceived, I didn't choose me, and you didn't choose you. And the importance of this little section outside of all of this time of enjoying life is to recognize that there's the hand of God, there's a finger of God that is in your life and in mine that we don't control. We didn't choose, because we didn't choose our parents. Maybe you choose where you live now because you're old enough to move out of home, or you're choosing to live with home or whatever. Maybe you have some choices now, but you didn't have the choice for the first 16 years anyway. At least most of us didn't. Because there's a God figure. Recognize that there's a hand of God, there's a finger of God that is at work in each of our lives. And there's nothing better for us to recognize that God's at work. And yet, as it says in the end of verse 11, we can't figure out and we can't comprehend what God's doing from the beginning to the end. I don't know why, and then fill in the blank for your life. I don't know why some things actually worked out for me and it didn't for my brother. And I don't know why some things didn't work out for me and it did for my brother. It's not all, well, I made better choices. No, we can't always make that claim. Sometimes we can. We either keep the commands of God or don't. Sometimes we can. But most of the time it's not me, myself, and I because I chose. And I have perceived, verse 14, that whatever God does endures forever. You can't add to and take away because God did it. All right, what do you think? What do you think of this section of God's fingerprint in your life and in mine as it contrasts to the first 2.5 chapters? So maybe you choose your career to a degree. Like one man I know, he did well in school. He wanted to go off into the medical profession. He was going to be a brain or a heart surgeon. That's what he was going to do. Soon after he was finished with med school and he was in some of his fellowships, he got himself all mixed up and he washed out of the upper echelons of doing all of that. And he never made it to heart surgery and brain surgery because it couldn't work. Now, if he would have gone to college and that medical school at a different location that didn't have quite as high echelon, high smarts of other students there, he probably could have still been okay. but that's not where he had landed. See, it's not all predetermined by my choices. Sometimes God has a hand in it that's beyond what we think. Now, you want to go be a doctor, go be a doctor. That's great. We need doctors. And by the way, I would much rather have Christian doctors than non-Christian. I really would. Go be a doctor. There's a hand of God at work. And this hand of God that's at work helps us to understand better the beginning of verse 2 of there being a time to be born and a time to die. The hand of God being at work in all of these midst of our times also brings us to our time of death. And that's the last portion of this chapter that sometimes we want to shy away from death. And I understand it. It's a time of sorrow. It's a time of, it's a time that we just wrestle with. We just do. Someone read verses 16 to 22. Chapter 3, verse 16 to 22. I'm sorry, go ahead. Because at the end of all life, whether it's the pleasure or whether it's the hard work, ends up being death. This writer had come to the conclusion that it's not much difference for animals and men. Okay? I think he's wrong in that. But his idea is, let's not take that too far, okay? But his idea is, just as you cruising down the road and you see that roadkill from the squirrel that didn't make it the whole way across, that's going to happen to us someday. Maybe not roadkill, but just like that squirrel was living happily, going about his thing, chasing nuts, going nuts. He came to an end. And you and I, sometimes we go through a pretty nutty life and we come to an end also. Okay? He says we all go to the same place. So, the same place as in the place of Sheol, the place of death, no longer breath. We share the same oxygen, we take a whiff of the same breath, okay? But we come to the same place, and that's death. I don't think that means necessarily that we're going to see Sparky in heaven, all right? Not really convinced of all of that. But if he is, he's there. It's fine by me. I really am not going to care to that point. The place where men goes is the place where beast goes. And he says we're not much different. I think he's wrong in that spot. There's a very vast difference between Sparky and between me. Okay? There's a huge difference because you and I share the image and likeness of God that Sparky doesn't have. And God cares about our life and our death much more than he does about Sparky. But yet, Jesus says that God sees whenever that sparrow falls, doesn't he? Okay? So God saw whenever that squirrel didn't make it the whole way across the road. And God also sees whenever calamity comes and visits our homes and it ends in death. He had come to the conclusion there's nothing better for us than to just, enjoy life just a little bit. I perceive that there's nothing better. Just rejoice in your, just live a little. Live a little, but not self-centered that, I'm going to live it up because tomorrow we die. Jesus had actually spoken against us living in that type of self-centeredness. But relax and enjoy life just a little bit the way that you have it. You're only going to be 18 once. And then you're going to be 19. And then you're going to be, I don't know what else God's going to have for you. But you're going to have it once. And yeah, you might still be strong and of good health and able to work well into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or whatever else. But then after a bit, it's like, that I didn't even know I had that muscle outside of biology class, but boy, that thing hurts a whole lot worse. What did I do? Okay? And that's part of the reality of life also. Any thoughts or questions on chapter 3? Yes, in those accounts that's listed, it was a very self-centered lifestyle that they had. They lived completely for themselves with no regard to God. I'm going to live the way I want to because I can right now in and of the moment.
So very much the party mentality.
Right, but it was not in the fear of God in that idea. Good question. Any other thoughts? All right, we're not going to read all of chapter 4. here in class, but there's a couple nuggets that I want to pick out. Okay, and then we'll go for a break. There's going to be some familiar passages that familiar verses or short sayings that we see that's here. He had come to the conclusion that under the sun everything is just evil. Outside of God, everything of life is just doldrums, and it just, what's the point in living? Okay, in a time of despair, I think there's lots that we can have. And as he has observed all of those who are in slavery, all of those who are just the low guys scraping up the bottom of it, he says, you know what, they'd be better off dead. As you look at slavery that takes place out around our world that we have today, and even some of the illicit slave trade that happens within our own country, some of them wish they were dead. Okay? And so I'm not going to beat up Solomon for making some of these statements that he had, because in some of them the life is so terrible that they wish they could die. And you read some of those stories that come around from time to time. He had come to that conclusion. Verse 4, I want to see all the toil and skill of man and work that comes from a man envying his neighbor. You ever heard of needing to keep up with the Joneses? All right, that's what this means. If all you're doing is to work to keep up with the Joneses, and again, that's all this means. Because I got to keep up with the other guy, because, oh, he got one, I have to have one too. He got new wheels on his truck, I got to get new wheels on mine. Okay, he got a boat, I got to get a boat. Better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and striving after the wind. Better is contentment, to have little with contentment, than to have a whole bunch and you just can't sit down and relax and even enjoy the whole bunch that you have. Better is contentment. Solomon understood that contentment would have been better than trying to amass all of the stuff from around the world and all of his exotics. Verse 9, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. If one falls, the other will lift him up. Woe to him that's alone and falls, and yet not another to lift him up. Have you ever heard the thing, don't go hiking in the wilderness alone? Okay. Just this past weekend out in Montana, there was a fellow who was hiking, and he slipped on a rock, and he impaled himself with his walking stick that he had. One of those, walking sticks. One of those real nice ones. And he had impaled himself with it. Well, he was an ER nurse, and so he did a self-assessment and said, not bleeding too much. I can keep on walking. Kind of checked his own heart rate just a little bit. With what he had, he said, let's get out of here. And some of the helpers that were with him were like, well, we can't go. Well, what am I going to do? Stay out here for however long till emergency people come out for me? And so he walked off. I don't remember how many miles it was that he walked, but it was a number of miles that he walked out to the vehicles, and he told his people, hey, go in front of us so that if there's any families or any children coming down the road, you can tell them to get the children not to look because this is pretty bad. And he walked out to the car on his own accord. They took him to Billings where they could actually do surgery and remove the impaled pole that he had. Don't walk in the woods alone. Okay? If you're going hunting, always tell somebody where you're going hunting. That's part of the hunter safety course, right? Okay, there's some good reason for some of this. Make sure somebody knows where you're at. Just some good common sense that is left there. Verse 12, though one man prevail against another who is alone, 2 can withhold him, but a 3/4 cord is not quickly broken. That passage is spoken of numerous times within marriages, man and woman and God. You mix that together, 3 is better than 2. You braid together 3. That 3-strand holds together better than if it was just 2. And some of you ladies who like to braid your hair in some way or the other, 3 strands or more holds together in a braided pigtail of some kind better than just 2. It's just the way it works. And he said that's also the way it works in life. Better is a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who won't listen to anybody. A wise youth starts to ask questions and starts to ask counsel. Okay, what do you think I should do? An old foolish king says, well, I'm at the top. There's nobody to ask who, and I'm not going to listen to him anyway. And he came to the conclusion that a wise youth that doesn't have a whole lot of money is better than the rich old geezer that's at the top of his crown and isn't happy. See, any of us can fit that category, can't we? Okay? You don't have to be somebody. All right. Because in the end, even that old king is going to be led about and eventually go to his grave also, just like all the rest of us. Any thoughts on chapter 4 or questions about chapter 4? Okay, so we're going to live in reality. What do you do to escape reality? Read, okay?
What do we do or what do people do?
Both.
They drink.
They drink, okay? I'm assuming you're talking about other people, not we in that case situation. Thank you, Dale. I appreciate the clarification. To escape reality, what do we do? Flee? Drugs? Yeah. Sleep. Oh, there you go. Hey, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm just going to go watch my eyelids for a while. I like doing that myself. Drugs. Which kind? Coffee? Hunt? Ignore? How would you ignore? Put these great big old beats on and just become my own little self, right? Or these little things, and I'm going to work and ignore everyone else around me.
Always that noisy.
Yeah. So Saturday morning and afternoon, I'm flying home, and I get to my layover spot from Chicago that needs to come into Harrisburg. I had almost missed my flight from Bozeman to Chicago. But from there, they told me the app on my phone said I needed to go to E6. And so I'm there at E6, and sure enough, up here on the board, flight to Harrisburg. And I get this buzz that comes through on my phone. Boarding has begun, but stay where you're at. We'll text you whenever your group gets ready to start boarding. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just stay here and finish eating my little snack that I had here and drinking my coffee. I'll just wait a little bit. And I'm like, man, time hasn't come. And I look around, and there's nobody else standing in line at the gate. I'm like, well, where is everybody? And I pulled out my phone, and here it said E7. Or no, I'm sorry, I was at E7, and it said E6. Well, I had to hoof it up through there a little piece because there was some shops in between. And I get up there, and this one said, going to Des Moines, Iowa. I'm like, well, I want to go to Des Moines, I want to go home. And so I asked the lady, it says, now, my app is saying that I need to come here, but this. I'm so sorry, sir. I said, I want to go to Harrisburg. You're at the right gate. You need to be at this gate. And so I was one of the last ones on. And I said, well, scanned my boarding passes on my phone, and I went to, I put it back in my pocket, ready to go, and I said, by the way, I didn't even look to see what seat I have. Where am I sitting at? 34B. I'm like, oh, glory, great. That's all the way in the back of the plane, smack beside the wall, in the middle between two people, assuming that it's completely full. Can't lean my seat back. I was like, oh, wow, they put me all the way in the back. Is there another place? By the way, I would hate to have one of the first class seats be empty all the way over there. I tell them that every time, and I got this close one time. There was somebody else that said the same thing just in front of me, and I missed it. One of these days, maybe one of these days, I can fly first class.
Well pride.
What's that?
Well pride.
I will too. She says, well, hey, I I have an exit aisle seat. Are you good with an exit? Yeah, I'll take that one. Have some more leg room. Absolutely. So I walk into the plane, and here I am on the exit row there, along the aisle, and there's nobody else beside me. I'm like, oh, this will be joy. This will be great. If I'm the last one, no one else can be beside me. I've got room to relax a little bit, not leaning on somebody else's shoulder or having somebody else sleep on my shoulder like happened on the way out. This will be great. And I looked across the aisle, and here's this guy sitting all the way against the windows, and he's got this goofy mask on his face. And there's nobody else between the aisle and the middle seat. I'm like, okay, I'm over here. He's over there. Now what? Is there anybody else going to come or not? And he's sitting there with this goofy mask on and just keeps on doing this number. Like, man, he's batting around at the air. What is up with this guy anyway? I mean, he's a few sandwiches short of a picnic. I know. There's something just is not right. And of course, the lady comes back and she has to read you your rights, or be able to say, hey, are you willing to help in the place that we have a crash? Are you willing to help open the door and get people out? Yeah. And this guy looks at him with his goofy mask. He says, can you see me? I'm like, sir, can you hear what I'm saying? Okay. And she wasn't really sure what all to take on the deal either. But she does all this stuff. Of course, I say, yes, I can deal with all of that. I will help in the case of emergency if necessary. This guy had said that he could also, and in the meantime, he keeps punching at the air. And I'm like, wow, what a guy. Doing everything he can to escape reality. I got to get a picture of that. Yeah, that's my hand over here, okay? And he's sitting over there with these virtual reality glasses on. I don't know what he was doing. I have no idea what he was seeing through those fancy goggles. But he looks like he's just enjoying life, doesn't he? See the smile on his face? I don't either. What do we do to escape reality? Okay? Yes, I'm aware we can use some of those virtual reality goggles to be able to learn things. So maybe he was learning how to be the next, entrepreneur or surgeon or something like that along the way. I don't know. Maybe he was coding some more stuff, and he's a millionaire YouTuber somewhere that writes code. I have no idea.
Maybe it was Joe Brown learning to fly a plane.
Joe Well, I haven't seen any of the pilots do this number, because he would sit there for a little bit and punch a number. So I don't know what kind of game he was playing, or word game or whatever along the way. But
I don't want him for a pilot.
he's got earplugs in. He's got his VR glasses on. And he's going to the same destination that I am. Now, I'm not going to ask how many of you have those. It doesn't really matter to me if you do or don't. But there's people that spend hours and hours playing virtual reality to escape the actual reality that was going on. Okay? We weren't up in the air too terribly far, and after a bit he pulls that away and he opens up his little laptop notebook that he had there and started watching another movie. He took those VR glasses off. Okay? What do we do to escape reality? Okay? What do we do? If your life is truly meaningless, and God is not a part of that, as we saw in chapter 3, and we can't make the connection that God has a fingerprint in your life and in mine, and we can't get there, then we're better off like this guy. Just pass the time. Just get on with life, because tomorrow will be just like that dead squirrel. So I may as well have fun right now and escape what really is going on. Now, I want to also be very aware that sometimes through some strong, traumatic events that take place in our life, we need to go and let our mind rest, and we need to go and just get away and rest a while. We need to escape some reality. I'm very aware of that. I'm not at all against saying, I'm so exhausted, I just need to sleep. I get it, okay? And I don't believe there's anything in the Scripture that condemns that. And I understand that sometimes it's like, well, you know what? My mind just isn't shutting down. I've got to do something. And so you want to play a video game to let your mind shut down or something like that, okay? I understand. It's easy for us to spend hours with podcasts and things being pushed to us that keeps us from thinking ourselves. One of the tragedies that I believe that has affected or is infecting the Christian church today is we have what I call podcast Christians. Their only depth of Scripture is what somebody has pushed to them on the phone in a podcast. It gives them the good verses that, you know, God has a plan for you and to prosper you and not to do you harm. It has the good stuff. And it doesn't have those that say, well, if we make wrong choices, we might end up reaping a harvest that we don't want to have. And when we have podcast Christianity, and by the way, if you have of the ability to be able to write code and be able to put together through computer algorithms to push words of encouragement, to push good sayings and good messages and songs or whatever to people, do it. By all means, do it. Help to be an encouragement to people all around the world, okay? Please. But if that's all that you and I take in, is what someone else has spoon-fed to me, then our depth and our rootedness in God and in what He wants for our life is not going to be very deep. It just isn't. You have to get out the Bible, like the real pages, and read it. One of the things that we have noticed in education, and the public schools are completely reworking so much of what they did. And COVID helped to bring about all kinds of state funds became available. Get iPads and get Google Chrome notebooks to all of your students so that now you can send all the lesson plans home and they have it all. You know, you're not buying expensive textbooks that cost $60. It's just one notebook and now you have the text sent to them. And it's going to be cheaper, and it's going to be more efficient, it's going to be easier, and someone can be missing, and they can still be traveling on their way to Hawaii or wherever they're going for vacation, and they still get that lesson pushed to them, and they're ready to go. And one of the things that teachers and educators and philosophers and psychiatrists are understanding way over and above, and that is the academic rates of students have gone way down just in the last 5 years since COVID when all that was pushed to it. And the schools that have started all of that media, all of that digital information several years before, and it became that much bigger, they're saying, veteran teachers, we have to get rid of the digital, we have to get back to the real books. Because somewhere in the science of our brains, the way God wired us, we read and understand and retain more from a printed or written page than we do off of a video light-produced screen. We just do. That's the reality. I have Bible apps on my phone also, and I use those as search methods different times. But I very rarely read the Scripture off of my phone. I don't have an iPad or a Google Chrome notebook pad thingy that I take to church with all of my stuff on it. I just don't. I understand this is some technology. I'm not telling you that you can't take your electronic device to be your Bible at church. But science has said there's things that get missed because the way the brain perceives that, of the light coming into the eyes, through the eyes into the brain, is not the same than whenever the brain receives the light coming off of a printed page. There are uses for virtual reality. There are uses for your smartphones and for your notebooks and so forth. There certainly are. But pause for a moment. As Christians, as brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of God, pause for a moment to be able to say, all right, Lord, I want to take time alone with you and not just what my buddy pushed to me. Okay? Again, there's useful things. There's useful podcasts. There's useful messages, to be able to go out to encourage the masses. There's certainly a place for that. But your appetite has to be more than just the fast food that finds at a drive-through. You need to be able to sit down and actually eat from the scroll that God has given us. Take time for that. When we do that, we understand the fear of God is found here in chapter 5. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they don't know that they're doing evil. Do not be rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few. For a dream comes with much business, and a fool's voice with many words. When you vow a vow to God, do not delay in paying it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you vow. It's better that you should not vow, than you should vow and not pay. Let not your mouth lead you into sin. Do not say before the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For when dreams increase and words grow many, there is vanity. But God is the one that you must fear. If you need to have a moment to veg out a little bit, or you need to have a moment where you're traveling and you're flying a long distance from here to there, and you want to pass the time with a movie or with a game with somebody else along the way, okay. But don't stay there in that moment. And if I were to ask you, and if you were to ask me, to just do a reality check and look on your phone with the amount of screen time that you had for the last week, it would probably make our mouths go open. And I said, me too, right? Well, I was doing work. Okay. Take a moment periodically to do what I call a media fast. A moment just for simply 1 week that says, I'm going to not be involved in any electronic media. And it's really easy, by the way, with all of the messaging apps and your social media and whatever else going on. It's really easy to put a message out to the whole mass of people who follow you. I'm going dark for a week. If you want me, you have to call my phone. And I'll answer, but I'm going dark. I'm not responding to any text messages. Oh, but that would mess up my streak. So, it's all gone. Okay? Just that 1 week, periodically. It doesn't have to be a week every month, but just periodically. Just every so often. Take that one week and go media dark. And you'd be surprised what else you would notice in the reality, the real reality around you. You'd start to hear birds that you never heard before. You'd start to notice things as you travel down the road that you never noticed before. You'd start to actually communicate, actually speak to people in a way that you never realized. I get a kick out of it. Whenever I was young growing up, if we needed to talk to our friends, we waited to the next day at school. We jumped on our bike and we rode 1 or 2 miles down the road to be able to talk to them. Or else we'd pick up the phone and call him. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm eating supper. All right, I'll call you back later on. And what do you do now? I'm going to send him a text. Can I call? Well, you could have just called and found out if you could call. But you've got to text, first of all, before you can actually call. Okay? All right. Different era of time. This too shall pass. But let's live in the real reality. And that fellow passenger, I couldn't get a word. I couldn't get him to say anything. He was locked in his own little world. Somewhere, by his actions and by what I could see that the movie that he was playing, I don't think he had a personal relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. We're asked in verse 7 there to the end to fear God. There's vanity. There's with all the wealth and honor. Let's read some of this last portion of chapter 5. Chapter 5, verse 8. If you see in the province the oppression of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, and do not be amazed at the matter, for a high official is watched by a higher, and there was none higher over them, but this is gain for the land in every way, a king committed to cultivated fields. What do you do with the oppression that you see around him? What do you do whenever you see bullies taking over? School, youth group, the world around us. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money. He who loves wealth with nor he who loves wealth with his income, because this is also a vanity. I ask you a question, how much income do you need? What would be the nice ideal? And it's fine. I'm not condemning any of the answers or responses that were given. But if it was all about, well, I just need a little bit more and then I'll be happy, it will go away. It won't be there. A neighbor not too far from me who used to be a student in school a number of years ago, he knew how to write code. In fact, if he buys a new computer, he changes most of the guts out of it there, or reprograms it somehow. He doesn't run off of regular Microsoft Windows. He makes his own deal that he runs with. He was wheeling and dealing with AI before AI actually became known, with stocks trading and so forth, and he got involved in cryptocurrency quite a bit. Lost millions, but gained millions. Last time I talked to him, he said he's worth over $1 billion. And he's just what I would call a kid, like 25 years old. Oh, yeah. Another friend of mine started working for him, and they were flying all over the place, and anywhere where he would fly first class. Flying first class to Seattle, to another big gaming convention of some kind going on, or to Las Vegas or to Dubai, and just all around the world, and yep, he's flying first class. And I asked him if he's happy. Oh, yeah, I guess. You know, people say that money don't make you happy. That's because you've always been poor. But I'm happy I get to do what I want. Okay. But are you really happy? A friend of mine that worked for him finally said, you know what, I'm done. Because he would post, after he finished eating, for himself and the friend that was working for him, the tab that was $800 for the evening meal. Because they had had some kind of special steak and salmon with a big bottle of some kind of expensive wine. A lifestyle that I have no idea of understanding. If that's what you want to do, fine, be my guest. And then came those couple airplane crashes. You know that one that the airplane crashed there in Louisville, Kentucky, and there was a couple close calls that had taken place, and then he was afraid of flying. And he had to go to Denver, Colorado. He's going Amtrak, and he had come up with this great big conspiracy theory about how the government was controlling everything of flying, and he was afraid to go. He's running Amtrak, so he ran Amtrak for about a month, all the places where he needed to go, and then complained that it took him too long to get there. Okay. See, if he would have just read Ecclesiastes 5, he would have found the answer. That's all he needed to do. And I want you to know the answer before you get to that spot. And I don't care if you're a millionaire or a billionaire from cryptocurrency or stock market or gold or silver. I don't care. I really don't. But it's all gone. One day he called me up. I'm in trouble. Yeah. What's going on now? The FBI came in. Oh. Yeah, they came in and they swatted my house all over the place. They ripped my safe out and torched the thing open and took away my 2 blocks of gold that I had in my car. And they took everything that I had. And he had an exorbitant number of cash that he proclaimed. And I never knew if he was actually telling me the truth or not. He was just one of those guys, okay? He was one of those guys like one of the Ledbetters that Jerry Clower would talk about. He'd rather climb to the top of a tree to tell you a lie than to stand on the ground and tell you the truth. Okay, somehow he just got a bang out of, oh yeah, we just read the mouth of a fool. He always had exaggerated words. And we just read that from Ecclesiastes 5, didn't we? He's a fool. Maybe I would like to have a little bit of his money that he has. He'd never miss it. If he truly is a billionaire, he'd never miss it. Why don't he just share it a little bit? But he'd rather talk like a fool and also live like one. And oh yeah, he's running around with this guy and that guy, and after a while those Tate brothers, who are very vile and wicked men who just got arrested, he claimed he knew them. All their money's coming and going real quickly. The Ecclesiastes writer, Solomon experienced some of that. He had it all, everything that he wanted. He had it all. And it was gone. He said, I've got a fine that I have to pay, $1 million to the fine. I called the federal judge that I know who's overseeing it. He's like, I can't help you this time because I know him personally. I don't know if he does or not. Oh, I said, don't. He said, I can't do anything for you. You've got to pay it. He says, I don't know how I'm going to get it started because they took all of my stuff and froze all my bank accounts. If I could just get someone to loan me $100,000, I could make it all back. Well, I don't know where he got his money from. But about 4 months after that account, when he claimed that FBI came in and took all of his stuff, he was boasting that he was worth over $100 million again. So I don't know how he did it. I don't even care to know how he did it. I'd be afraid if I knew how he did it. Because whenever he was still a student in school, he would call me, and then after a bit, I'd have another phone call come in the next day, and it was somebody with a phone number I didn't know, and I would pick it up. He says, I said, you get another phone? Yeah. I was messing around the dark web, and I started getting messages that I didn't want, so I threw it into the river. Okay. So I guess if you're afraid someone's tracking you, just go across the Susquehanna and throw it in the river. He's got a couple of them in there. You see, he was afraid. Even though, according to his claim, he had it all. He lived in fear because it's all gone. I don't believe he ever earned a serious dollar, at least not much, but somehow he amassed all that he wants. And verse 12 says this. Well, one of you read verse 12. One of you read verse 12 of chapter 5. He does not know what a good night's sleep is. And he might fly first class to Dubai and might have all kinds of servants that help to look after and tote all of his bags, and he might live in the most comfort top bed that there is, but he doesn't know a good night's rest. And all last week I'm pounding my arms and shoulders and back sore and just to lie down and sleep. I slept better than he does. the sleep of a hardworking man is sweet. And some of you know what that's like. Okay? Or to gain the riches, to gain the wealth, to gain what you want to with some kind of little squirreliness that's going on, then what? Sweet is the sleep of the laborer, whether he eats a lot or whether he doesn't. Boy, he can just lie down and saw that wood. As much as I would like to have a bigger bank account that I have, okay? As much as I would like to make a much bigger salary than I have the last number of years, I really don't want to give up my peaceful night's sleep. Okay? I'd rather have a peaceful night's sleep than to have a larger than necessary bank account and not be able to sleep. What do you think? Solomon concludes this passage speaking about those who have worked hard and gained a lot of possessions, and recognize that my possessions is a gift from God. If we live with the idea that, well, I got what I did because I worked hard and picked myself up by my own bootstraps and I'm ready to go. If you would just work a little bit harder, then you'd have money too. Wait. Can you recognize that it's a gift of God? Because there's plenty who worked a whole lot. All of you, I guarantee, works harder than my neighbor. And if what he is declaring that he's worth over $1 billion is true, all of you sleep better than him. And when you and I can recognize that what we do have is a gift from God, whether we have lots of money or whether we don't, it's a gift from God. There's a certain amount of peace that we have. Young people, grab that. Grab a hold of that kind of peace. Grab a hold of that kind of purpose in life. Yes, enjoy life. Work hard, live a little, have good vacations, enjoy laughter and mirth. Recognize that that too is a gift of God. Fear God and keep His commandments. Any closing thoughts? Thank you. Thank you for your attention, for your attendance. Live in the reality that God gave you. Gave most of us good health. Enjoy it. It's a puff because that health can leave in a hurry, but don't worry about it leaving in a hurry. Enjoy life that God gave you. God bless you each one. We'll see you back again tomorrow afternoon, Lord willing.